Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this one, I'm taking a look at the last character of the previous update, Ant-Man. For a lot of people, this video probably won't be too interesting because the character can only reach tier 3, and the meta in PvE and PvP is largely dominated by characters that can reach tier 4. For the most part, the character is going to be either used as a leadership in PvE, or for the most part, a PvP unit for Alliance Conquest. I thought it was worth reviewing Ant-Man's uniform since he is a premium character. You can't get his bios as easily as you can from other characters. You basically have to get them through crafting, similar to how you'd get them for Blue Marvel and also for Nova Sam Alexander. Also, to spice up the video, I'm doing a double crystal coupon giveaway, so if you want to be eligible for that, make sure to go to my Discord channel. You can find the link in the video description. Go there, sign up to the Discord, and then leave a comment on this YouTube video with your Discord name so that if you win, I know who to give the crystal coupons to. People more than likely won't use Ant-Man in PvE, but I decided to test him just to see how good he is at level 70, so I went into a stage 35 of Null without using his leadership or supports, and he was able to complete the first phase in that 2-minute window, so he can potentially clear stage 35, and that is without a damage proc. Obviously with it, he'd easily be able to clear this, but I'd say that with the current setup, he is probably a little bit above average in terms of his PvE performance, but nothing too special or outstanding in it. If you want to build the character specifically for PvE, then a CTP of Rage is probably the easiest option to go with. Because the 5th skill has a delay cancel on it, it might be a little bit tough to make something like a CTP of Energy or a CTP of Destruction work, but if you get lucky or kind of fine-tune the rotation a little bit, you could potentially get away with it, and considering that the 4th skill is a continuous skill, you might be able to leverage that a little bit better than a Rage, but a Rage will probably be a lot easier to play and more effective. In terms of the rotation, you would want to do a quick cancel of the 1st and 2nd skill, then you do a 5 delay cancel after you see him kind of do a light beam that crosses in one direction. When it crosses in the other direction, you can go into your 3rd skill, cancel that, and finish off with the 4th skill. You stay in your 4th skill till you basically see your 5th skill is just about to come off cooldown, and then you repeat the rotation. When you end up getting your ultimate skill, you basically do the same rotation, but this time you finish off on the 6th skill because it ends up doing the most damage. You can see from this clip that on stage 69, when I did use his leadership and 2 supports, I still wasn't able to complete that first phase within the 2-minute window for him to be able to complete the fight entirely. However, if I were to add a damage proc, he should be able to complete it in that 2-minute window, so he can potentially complete this, but you would need a damage proc. Obviously, if he could go past level 70, even as far as level 72, then he could also easily complete this stage just by having that level increase versus the boss. So his PvE performance is okay, it's nothing really too outstanding, it won't really catch anyone's attention or kind of encourage them to build him for that reason, but his performance in PvP is what is a little bit more interesting. I initially tested him with just an invincible obelisk to see if he had enough offensive capabilities where I didn't have to build him offensively, and he was able to almost take down Madeline Pryor. He took down the artifact, or activated the artifact initially, and almost lasted long enough to take out her 2nd life or pass the proc activation. Keep in mind that the opponent is using Colossus as a support, whereas I'm only using his leadership and Wasp to debuff the character, as well as Red She-Hulk to give him some extra health and damage reduction. The character's kit and AI are actually quite good for PvP. He usually opens with the 5th skill, which gives him 6 seconds of invincible. It is also a full iframe, so if the opponent doesn't have iframe ignore or has it on a long cooldown, they will struggle to take down Ant-Man. He also gains 30% healing from the 5th skill and immediately removes any active buffs from the opponent. On top of that, the skill also has super guard break on it, so when he goes into that 5th skill, he'll basically lock down the opponent, especially if they're top proc or they don't have a CTP that gives them that super guard break immunity. Most importantly, the iframe ignore is also on the 5th skill, meaning that all of these benefits, the long iframe, invincible, removing active buffs, healing, everything like that, and super guard break is on that 5th skill and will constantly be used because the character will prioritize the 5th skill pretty much every time that he has it off cooldown. Outside of this, Anti-Man doesn't really use many of his other skills. When he finishes the 5th skill, he luckily does use his 1st skill, which actually gives him damage accumulation and also has super guard break on it. So the rotation actually works out pretty well for him. He pretty much just goes through the 1st and the 5th skill. It's unfortunate that he doesn't go through the 3rd or 4th skill too often unless he gets cancelled out of those skills. But when he does, he'll gain even more attack because both the 3rd skill and the 4th skill have attack buffs on them. With the latest uniform, Anti-Man got damage reduction added to his kit, which is much needed in PvP nowadays, but also got immunity to incapacitation, which is actually a very powerful passive ability because it means that his buffs can't be removed and his defenses can't be decreased. In my opinion, this ability is becoming even more powerful in PvP nowadays because a frequent number of PvP metas have the ability to remove active buffs. So with a character that just maintains all their buffs, their offensive and defensive ones, it is a pretty big deal because they can potentially keep all of the buffs they get through their skills 1 through 5 and gain a big advantage over the opponent over the course of a long fight. Another unique thing about Anti-Man's kit is that his passive gives him a 1-second barrier as well as a 6% heal every time he is hit on a 5-second cooldown. So it's sort of like a toned down version of Thanos' passive, which is nice, but they could have made it much better if they also added a debuff cleanse to it, so that you didn't really have to use a debuff leadership or passive, and you could fully utilize his leadership. The main issue with Anti-Man's kit, and the reason that he isn't just an absolutely amazing PvP character, is that he doesn't have any penetration whatsoever. This is a problem because most of the meta characters have invincible either through their kit or through a CTP option, and if he were to face them one-on-one without any kind of penetration, you can see from the clips alone that I don't really end up just wiping out full teams and usually come up short on the last character. You can obviously use a CTP destruction and get penetration from that to alleviate this issue, but as I mentioned at the start of the testing, the character's offensive capabilities are actually quite good, and you kind of need survival for the character to be able to take on the metas to avoid their kind of one-shot and burst damage. So if you end up going with a CTP destruction, you get the potential for the character to take out the opponent when they're invincible, but you won't necessarily last or outlast their revives or immortality effects. For that reason, I recommend a survival based build first, and a CTP of Conquest, surprisingly enough, is his most ideal option because he opens with the invincible and has healing both passively and on his 5th skill actively. Then you can benefit from the healing that you get from the Conquest. You also have invincible on top of the damage reduction that he gets from Conquest, so it makes him fairly tanky. As you can see from these clips, I am able to survive certain meta's attacks up to the point where I can take out either both lives or after their proc for the immortality effect. If you don't have a Conquest to go around, then I would recommend a CTP of Regen after that, or possibly even a CTP of Refinement. A CTP of Authority could potentially also work, but you don't really get any benefit from the invincible that the Authority has because he constantly just goes into the 5th skill, which has 6 seconds of invincible already. You might think that the character would outright suck in PvP without any kind of penetration, since so many characters now have either invincible from a CTP option or from their own kit, but I noticed that the character, even without using CTP destruction, actually does quite well because his 5th skill lasts for so long that oftentimes the opponents are just standing there for that 5-second duration when the invincible is up, and it will actually end up just finishing while he's still in that 5th skill, and then the damage will go through after. Anti-Man obviously isn't ideal for taking on top metas. He obviously doesn't have penetration in his kit. Most times top metas nowadays can burst you down very quickly, or if you get into long fights with them, they'll basically end up overpowering you or locking you down. However, he is actually quite solid versus characters that are just at the lower end of the meta or just on the cusp of being meta, since they usually lack some of the skills or effects that Anti-Man can take advantage of, such as having either long iframes or counter skills that need for them to be hit for the iframes to activate and things like that. So Anti-Man can take advantage of them, lock them down with the 5th skill, and pretty much end up winning. Unfortunately, the character just comes up short of being amazing for PvP. If the devs decided to give him penetration either passively or on his 5th skill, he would be much stronger than he currently is, and if they even decided to give him that debuff removal on his passive skill like I mentioned, then you could utilize his leadership, so you get that 60% increased attack, and you wouldn't have to use a debuff leadership or a debuff support. I'm not holding my breath, but if they made these changes and gave him a tier 4, he would be quite strong for PvP. Maybe with an Ultimates themed update they address this and make Ant-Man powerful for PvP. They should obviously do the same for Blue Marvel and Nova Sam Alexander. Blue Marvel already has that crazy high damage reduction, he just needs healing and the tier 4 upgrade obviously. And similarly, Nova was actually pretty powerful when he came out as well because he had a very short cooldown on his iframe ignore and had super guard break on that skill as well, so he could constantly spam it and lock down opponents. So if they upgrade him properly, he could be pretty powerful in PvP too. I obviously can't really recommend this uniform unless you're really into Alliance Conquest, because outside of that, you're not really going to get much usage out of this. Don't forget, if you want to be eligible for the Crystal Coupon giveaway, you need to sign up to my Discord. You can find the link in the video description, and then just leave a comment on this video with your Discord name and whatever else you want to say. I will be tier 4 in Quicksilver and most likely Scarlet Witch after that, so those will be the next 2 videos. But that does it for this one. If you enjoyed this one, found it entertaining or useful, please consider liking, subscribing, and possibly sharing it with others. Again, it might help them out, and it always helps me out. As always, I appreciate people taking the time to watch these videos, so thank you, but the video is now over.